So I keep getting triggered by my ex. So the answer to that is really going to depend on what is happening for you. So my very first question is about what kind of contact is happening with the ex, because really you want to have as little contact as possible. You want to remove your ex from all social media and communicate with them only in the way that you need to for whatever is going on. If you have shared custody with kids, for example, you may need to continue communicating with them, right? But there is a style of communicating, a low contact style of communicating with the ex to really reduce the amount that they're amount of access they have to you to trigger you. And over time, they will start communicating with you less when you follow this low contact process, because they're not getting the stimulation that they want and need, right? They thrive on that drama, right? So as you no longer engage with them, you will hear from them less and less. So that's one thing. It's really going into that either no contact if you can. If you're able to go no contact, that is the best thing to do. If for some reason you need to have contact, I actually call it logistical contact, because people get so confused by no contact. They're like, I have to communicate with them. Logistical contact, all right? So what that means is there some piece of information that I need to communicate in order to take care of the kids? It looks like this is coming up with the kids, so yes. So when you're sharing children with the ex, you want to only have logistical contact. Your ex, if they're narcissistic, which they probably are, because that's why you're here, or some other similar disorder personality type, they're probably going to send you a message with all kinds of, like a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs long, with all kinds of stuff in it that includes why you're a terrible parent, why you did something wrong, maybe telling you about their new girlfriend or boyfriend or something, right? It's just all over the place, and all these things that are triggering you. And someplace in there, it says, you know, our son is sick and needs to go to the doctor. It probably doesn't say he needs to go to the doctor, but it says something that requires your attention about your child. You respond with, great, our son is sick, I will take him to the doctor on X, Y, and Z date. That's it. And all the other stuff that's in that message, that's triggering, that they're really good about saying things that put you on the defensive. And our number one response when we get those messages is to be defensive about ourselves. So how many people here get defensive? Put a 10 in the chat box if you're somebody who, when your ex reaches out to you, you're like, I need to defend myself because they're saying all these terrible things about me, right? Yeah, exactly. What your ex thinks about you, so many 10 plus. What your ex thinks, this is a difficult concept, okay? So I'm gonna say it right now like it's just easy piece of cake. It's not, okay? But this is where you're moving towards. What your ex says about you does not matter. What they think about you, let me say that, what they think about you does not matter. And you do not need to defend yourself to them, because you know your truth. The best thing you can do is to be grounded in the truth of who you are and what you know. And every time your ex says something that you're like, oh my God, I have to defend myself, simply say to yourself, what they think about me does not matter. Just because he says it does not make it true. And stay grounded in who you are. And then look for that piece of information that you need to respond to, because it has to do with logistics, and respond to that. And if there is no logistical information that needs to be communicated, you do not respond to their message. And if you're sharing custody with your ex, I highly recommend only doing email or talking parents. No more texting, no more them having access to you 24/7. Unless for some reason texting is better for you. I did have a client whose ex would write such long emails that it became texting was better for a client in a particular situation. But typically, you want to minimize the amount of access that they have to you. Okay, so then the other thing, there was another thing I saw popped up in here about, well, if the kid is sick, then if the kid is with the ex and the kid is sick, then the ex should be taking them to the doctor. Why do I have to do it? So this is the other thing that comes up is everything is freaking my responsibility. You guys like raise your hands with the emojis if everything is always your responsibility with your ex, or you can comment in the chat also. Are you the responsible one? Put responsible in the chat if you're the responsible one. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. I'm not sure if everyone here has kids. We're not going to spend all the time talking about kids, but this is really important. Yeah, we've got people in the chat, right? You're responsible for everything. And you can get to a place where you feel like, why do I have to do everything? You're the kid's parent too. You take some responsibility for a change. You pay for shoes for a change. This is really difficult concept to get into your body and into your mind, but this will change the lives of your kids as well as you, right? Here's what happens. The kid needs something: shoes, backpack for school, school supplies, doctor's visit. If they're old enough, they ask the parent that they're with. If they're not old enough, they ask another parent. If they're not old enough, they don't ask anything, right? They ask the parent that they're with, and they're like, I'll just use me for an example. Let's say they come to me and they're like, Mom, I need shoes. And I'm like, I got you shoes last time. You need to talk to your dad. They go to dad, and dad doesn't do it. Now what happens? The kid feels like they can't ask. The kid's going to stop asking. The kid's going to shut down. The kid's going to lose the feeling of stability, of security, of love, and of their needs being met. And guess what? Now that when they get older, what are they going to do? They're going to end up in the same kind of relationship that you found yourself in. If you want to break the cycle with your children and set them up for success in the future, the best thing that you can do is pretend that you are a single parent. And for those, for people who are not parents here listening, we are going to move on to ruminating in a minute, but this is such an important thing, and I see people talking about it in the chat, okay? Pretend that you are a single parent. What that means is your child needs shoes, you go buy them. It's your ex's turn to take them to the doctor. Doesn't matter, you take them to the doctor. Whatever they need, you provide to the best of your ability, even if it's the other parent's turn or responsibility or whatever. Because what matters is meeting the needs of your child. It's not about doing it 50-50. It's not about letting the other parent off the hook. It's not about you having to be responsible all the time. Because what happens when you are always thinking about it's the other parent's turn to do this, what are you doing? You are putting all the attention on the ex, and the attention is no longer on your kid, and the attention is no longer on you. So the number one thing I talk about with parallel parenting, and AJ actually is going to talk about parallel parenting this week, so look for her episode if this is something that you would like to hear more about, okay? So the number one thing that you can do is always put your attention on the kid and then also on yourself. And if you notice that all your thoughts are on the other parent, then that means you need to shift your focus and put it back on yourself, okay? So I'm going to move on from parallel parenting. I'm just going to quickly check this chat. I know there's a lot of comments and responding, so that's awesome. Oh, I'm not responding to some text, and then he texts and asks why I'm ignoring him. Fine. Like, you're not responsible for his emotions. Just keep ignoring him. I don't believe in ghosting, y'all. I believe in open and honest communication. This only applies when we're dealing with toxic people and narcissistic people, okay? You are free to ignore your narcissistic ex or friend or coworker or whoever it is. You are not responsible for making them feel okay. You can ignore them for as long as you want. Okay, there was a question in here though that somebody said that's a really good question. Okay, how about when my adult children get together with ex and ex-mother-in-law? I'm not really sure what the question is, but I'm going to make this last comment about kids. We are programmed as animals to want the love and attention of our parents. How many people here have dysfunctional parents, but they still are either in touch with them or are seeking the love of their parents? Type love in the chat if you are still seeking the love of your parents. I shared this before and I'll share it again. When I first started out in my career many years ago, I worked at a group home for what at the time was labeled emotionally disturbed kids. They've changed that label now, but they were severely abused. They had been taken away from their parents and they were living in a group home. The worst abuse you could ever possibly imagine, like the worst of the worst, is what these kids had experienced. It was the highest level group home. They still wanted to reconcile with their parents. That was their hope and their dream. It is literally hardwired in us. Now, sometimes, yes, we are able to go no contact with our parents. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we need to do that, right? As a healthy parent or as a parent who's experienced abuse, it is very painful to see our children wanting a relationship with that other parent. Because we know how bad they are. We may also be worried and correctly and validly, is validly a word? Correctly worried for our child that they are having a relationship with an abusive person. It's scary, and I'm not minimizing that. I think most of you know I have 3 children, right? Two of them are still in contact with their dad, and I worry about it all the time. But your kids are always going to want the love of the other parent. And if you try to badmouth the other parent or you try to show them that the other parent is abusive, all that's going to do is cause a rift between you and your children. So as painful as it is, especially if your kids are adults and they want to have a relationship with the ex, they are free to do that. You don't have to approve of it. You don't have to like it. But if you want a healthy relationship with your children, the best thing you can do is just say nothing about it. You don't have to be joyful about it. But if you try to prevent them from seeing the other parent, all that's going to do is make them not want to be honest with you, make them lie to you about things that are happening, things like that.